Welcome to The Perspective. I'm your host, Amin Robinson. Now, I would like to say kudos to John Dickerson and the CBS News team for conducting an excellent debate. When it came to the topic of terrorism, all three candidates did an excellent job in convincing the American people that we need to stand together with our Muslim allies and not go to war with them. When it came to the topic of the financial squeeze on the middle class, all three candidates proposed that public colleges be debt-free, that community colleges be free as a whole, and that the drug costs be lowered and affordable for all Americans. When it comes down to race relations, all three candidates propose solutions that will improve race relations in our country. And when it comes down to big banks and Wall Street, Hillary Clinton was called out, and Bernie Sanders defended himself as usual. And he did it very well. That's one of the reasons why I think he won. Check out the clip.
Our topic is Wall Street. For those just joining us, welcome. Secretary Clinton. I went to the past there for a moment. Senator Sanders recently said, quote, people should be suspect of candidates who receive large sums of money from Wall Street and then go out and say, trust me, I'm going to really regulate Wall Street. So you've received millions of dollars in contributions and speaking fees from Wall Street companies. How do you convince voters that you're going to level the playing field when you're indebted to some of its biggest players?
Well, I think it's pretty clear that they know that I will. You've got two billionaire hedge fund managers who started a super PAC and they're advertising against me in Iowa as we speak. So they clearly think I'm going to do what I say I will do. And you can look at what I did in the Senate. I did introduce legislation to rein in compensation. I looked at ways that the shareholders would have more control over what was going on in that arena, and specifically said to Wall Street that what they were doing in the mortgage market was bringing our country down. I've laid out a very aggressive plan to rein in Wall Street, not just the big banks. That's a part of the problem, and I am going right at them. I've got a comprehensive, tough plan. But I went further than that. We have to go after what's called the shadow banking industry, those hedge funds. Look at what happened in 2008. AIG, a big insurance company, Lehman Brothers, an investment bank, helped to bring our economy down. So I want to look at the whole problem, and that's why my proposal is much more comprehensive than anything else that's been put forth.
Senator Sanders, you've said that the donations to Secretary Clinton are compromising. So what do you think of her answer?
Not good enough. Here's the story. I mean, let's not be naive about it. Why over her political career has Wall Street been the major campaign contributor to Hillary Clinton? Now, maybe they're dumb and they don't know what they're going to get, but I don't think so. Here is the major issue when we talk about Wall Street. It ain't complicated. You got 6 financial institutions today that have assets of 56%, equivalent to 56% of the GDP in America. They issue 2/3 of the credit cards and 1/3 of the mortgages. If Teddy Roosevelt, a good Republican, were alive today, you know what he'd say? Break them up. Reestablish Glass-Steagall. And Teddy Roosevelt is right. That is the issue. Now, I am the only candidate up here that doesn't have a super PAC. I'm not asking Wall Street or the billionaires for money. I will break up these banks, support community banks and credit unions. That's the future of banking in America.
Quick follow-up, because Secretary Clinton, you'll get a chance to respond. You said they know what they're going to get.
Look,
what are they going to get?
I have never heard a candidate, who has received huge amounts of money from oil, from coal, from Wall Street, from the military-industrial complex. Not one candidate said, these campaign contributions will not influence me. I'm going to be independent. Well, why do they make millions of dollars of campaign contributions? They expect to get something. Everybody knows that. Once again, I am running a campaign differently than any other candidate. We are relying on small campaign donors, 750,000 of them, $30 a piece. That's who I'm indebted to.
Well, John, wait a minute.
Personal privilege.
He has basically used his answer to impugn my integrity. Let's be
No,
frank here. Oh, wait a minute, Senator. You know, not only do I have hundreds of thousands of donors, most of them small, and I'm very proud that for the first time, a majority of my donors are women, 60%. I represented New York, and I represented New York on 9/11. When we were attacked, where were we attacked? We were attacked in downtown Manhattan, where Wall Street is. I did spend a whole lot of time and effort helping them rebuild. That was good for New York, it was good for the economy, and it was a way to rebuke the terrorists who had attacked our country. So, you know, it's fine for you to say what you're going to say, but I look very carefully at your proposal. Reinstating Glass-Steagall is a part of what very well could help, but it is nowhere near enough. My proposal is tougher, more effective, and more comprehensive, because I go after all of Wall Street, not just the big banks.
John, please. It's a matter of personal privilege, John.
Hold on, he was attacked.
John,
Hold on. He was attacked. Glass-Steagall, by the way, the idea is that you don't.
This issue touches on two broad issues. It's not just Wall Street. It's a corrupt campaign finance system. And it is easy to talk the talk about ending Citizens United, but what I think we need to do is show by example that we are prepared to not rely on large corporations and Wall Street for campaign contributions, and that's what I'm doing. In terms of Wall Street, I respectfully disagree with you, Madam Secretary, in the sense that the issue here is when you have such incredible power and such incredible wealth, when you have Wall Street spending $5 billion over a 10-year period to get deregulated, okay, the only answer that I know is break them up, all right, reestablish Glass-Steagall.
Senator, we have to.
In regards to minimum wage, both Bernie Sanders and Martin O'Malley said $15 per hour, but Hillary Clinton, she said $12 per hour. So in my opinion, I believe that's going to be a strike against her. In regards to immigration reform and executive action policies, all three candidates want something that's going to be fair for all Americans. And when it came to the last question about facing a crisis that will prepare you for the president's seat, Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton answered the question thoroughly and specifically. However, Martin O'Malley, in my opinion, his answer was weak. Check out the clip.
The debate.
Soon after your inauguration, you will face a crisis. All presidents do. What crisis have you experienced in your life that suggests you've been tested and can face that inevitable challenge? Secretary Clinton, you first.
Well, there are so many, I don't know where to start. I guess the one I would pick is the fact that I was part of a very small group that had to advise the president about whether or not to go after bin Laden. I spent a lot of time in the Situation Room as Secretary of State, and there were many very difficult choices presented to us, but probably that was the most challenging because there was no certainty attached to it. The intelligence was by no means absolute. We had all kinds of questions that we discussed, and at the end, I recommended to the president that we take the chance to do what we could to find out whether that was bin Laden and to finally bring him to justice. It was an excruciating experience. I couldn't talk to anybody about it. In fact, after it happened, the president called my husband. He called all the former presidents, and he said to Bill, well, I assume Hillary's told you about this. And Bill said, no, she hasn't. There was nobody to talk to, and it really did give me an insight into the very difficult problems presidents face.
Governor O'Malley, what crisis proves that you're tested?
John, I don't think that there is a crisis at the state or local level that really you can point to and say, therefore, I am prepared for the sort of crises that any man or woman who is the commander-in-chief of our country has to deal with. But I can tell you this. I can tell you that as a mayor and as a governor, I learned certain disciplines which I believe are directly applicable to that very, very powerful and most important of all jobs in the United States president, whose first and primary duty is to protect the people of our country. You learn that threats always change. You learn to create a security cabinet. You learn to create feedback mechanisms. You learn to constantly evaluate and understand the nature of the threats that you are being faced with. I have been tried under many different emergencies, and I can tell you that in each of those emergencies, whether they were inflicted by drug gangs, whether they were natural emergencies, I knew how to lead and I knew how to govern, because I know how to manage people in a crisis and be very clear about the goal of protecting human life.
Senator Sanders, what experience would you draw on in a crisis?
John, I had the honor of being chairman of the U.S. Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs for 2 years. And in that capacity, I met with just an extraordinary group of people from World War II, from Korea, Vietnam, all of the wars. People who came back from Iraq and Afghanistan without legs, without arms. And I was determined to do everything that I could to make VA healthcare the best in the world, to expand benefits to the men and women who put their lives on the line to defend me. And we brought together legislation supported by the American Legion, the VFW, the DAV, Vietnam Vets, all of the veterans organization, which was comprehensive, clearly the best piece of veterans legislation brought forth in decades. I could only get 2 Republican votes on that. We ended up with 56 votes. We needed 60. So what I had to do then is go back and start working on a bill that wasn't the bill that I wanted. Sit down with people like John McCain. Sit down with people like Jeff Miller, the Republican chairman of the House, and work on a bill. It wasn't the bill that I wanted, but yet it turned out to be one of the most significant pieces of veterans legislation passed in recent history. So the crisis was, I lost what I wanted, but I had to stand up and come back and get the best that we could.
All right, Senator Sanders, we end.
In conclusion, I believe Bernie Sanders won the second Democratic debate because, number one, he answered questions with substance. Number 2, he defended himself and his policies with intelligence. And number 3, he exposed the weaknesses of the other candidates on stage. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours and subscribe.